If you have been wondering how you can address stress, anxiety, and overwhelm naturally, then today's show is for you. We're meeting with my friend Jodi Cohen. Jodi is a best-selling author. She's an award-winning journalist. She's a functional practitioner, and she's the founder of Vibrant Blue Oils. She has combined her training in nutritional therapy and aromatherapy to create unique proprietary blends of organic and wild-crafted essential oils. Maybe you've seen her brand around before. She's helped over 50,000 clients heal from brain-related challenges, including anxiety, insomnia, and even some autoimmune issues. For the past 10 years or so, she has lectured at wellness centers, conferences, corporations on brain health, essential oils, stress, and detoxification. She's been seen in the New York Times, Wellness Mama, the Elephant Journal, and numerous publications. Her website is vibrantblueoils.com, and she is rapidly becoming a top resource for essential oils education all across the internet today. So, welcome, Jodi. Thank you so much for spending some time with us on C60 Health Connections.
Oh, thank you for having me. This is one of my favorite topics.
I am excited to have this discussion with you today because so many of us are inundated with, well, not so many of us, we're all inundated with overwhelming news and information and change, and it's just only accelerating. And so I know a lot of people are really struggling with anxiety and the feeling of overwhelm. And a lot of people, go towards utilizing solutions that just mask the symptoms. And I know that you're an expert on vagus nerve stimulation, and you know how to actually help the body reset itself and calm down in less than 5 minutes, which is exactly what I think people are needing to know more than ever today. So, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just tell us a little bit about your background, because I understand you've been through some really transformational experiences in your life, and they haven't been easy. And in my opinion, you're one of the most courageous women I know. So I'd love it if you wouldn't mind just sharing how you even got onto this path and became an expert in this space.
Oh my gosh, that's so incredibly kind. It's funny, like hindsight is 2020. I have probably had anxiety and panic disorder my entire life. You just get really good at masking. And my mask was like busy. If I could stay so busy, I never needed to feel, and I just would have to keep going. So I kind of threw myself into that world of really intense jobs, careers. My first job was actually in the US Senate for Ted Kennedy on the Health and Human Resources Committee. I'm dating myself. It was in 1991 before the internet. And I was in charge of hearings. And so they would give me like these big research binders, no internet, no search function. I would have to wade through them and find talking points. And so I got really good at figuring out data and kind of dot connecting and really figuring out the through narrative of like, what's the most important thing and how do we kind of articulate this clearly? And so I really did try to be healthy, in the way where I thought like lean cuisine was healthy back in the day. I made a lot of bad choices without realizing it. And when I got pregnant, all of a sudden, it's not just feeding me, it's feeding my baby. And so my first child was super easy, thought I was just a great mom and had another one 22 months later and realized these kids kind of come with their own personality. It's not that you're a great parent. I just got a lucky first child. And my second one, what was amazing. And yet he couldn't look at my nose. Like we would be like, look at my nose. And he's all over the place and very ADD, very sensory seeking. And I kept trying things. And one day a friend witnessed his personality change when he ate something and suggested I take him to a nutritionist. And she said, my brother was on Ritalin his whole life. And it turned out he was just allergic to weird foods. And I thought, well, I can certainly do that. I've tried everything else. And it changed our life. Like we changed his diet. And the next day he could look at my nose. He, all the sensory things kind of were dialed down. And I was so blown away because, parenting is almost a competitive sport. Like people can be really critical, really judgmental, and it's your baby. Like no one wants you to call their baby ugly. And so your feelings are hurt all the time. And I was just so blown away that how could I not know that food made such a difference in personality? So I went back and got a degree in nutritional therapy and was trying to help other moms. And one of the things I learned to help other moms was this idea of muscle testing, because it allows you to basically, the kid can be squirming all over the place and you can kind of touch them and still ascertain what is the root, what's the primary issue we need to address, and what's the best remedy to address it. And that came in handy when my first kind of life blow. I really do feel I crash test dummy myself a lot. So I like to think something unexpected and, not on my bucket list happens. And, I could die on that mountain, or I could say, I guess I'm going to figure this out. And once I figure it out, I really like to share what I learned with other people so they have to suffer less. So my husband at the time was bipolar and was super depressed, to the point where I really thought he might die on my watch. And friends who were smarter than I was suggested we move him to a residential treatment facility where they could take better care of him. And once he was out of the house, it was almost like I'd been working so hard. I'd been so vigilant all the time that I was just exhausted, because I knew he was safe and it wasn't my job to keep him safe. And full adrenal fatigue hit. I couldn't get out of bed. Kids were 5 and 7. I'd get up with them, make them breakfast, pack their lunch, drive them to school, come home, crawl back in the bed and set the alarm for pickup. And that was about all I could do. And I was ingesting all the right things. I was, making all the right lifestyle choices. And I just was flatlined. I had no energy. But fortunately, before this happened, I'd helped a friend with a fundraiser who was interested in essential oils. And she came over with this huge box of oils and said, it's interesting because you've been so stressed for so long, which means so high cortisol, which means so inflamed. I bet your gut is so inflamed that nothing you're ingesting is actually getting into your system and helping you. Oils are different. You can smell them. You can topically apply them. Try this. And it was like this weird ray of hope of like, whoa, that actually makes sense. Maybe this will work. Like I'm super open. So I tested the box kind of the way I muscle test children, and kept getting the same 5 single oils, which was unusual. Normally I would narrow it down to one remedy, and I couldn't narrow it down, which stumped me until it occurred to me, oh, wait a minute, they're liquid. Maybe I can combine them like a mixed drink or something. And so I literally, novice that I am, went into my kitchen, grabbed a shot glass and started testing each individual oil, 5 drops of this, 3 of this one, made my little mixed drink essential oil cocktail and put it on my low back over my adrenal glands. And within a few minutes, I felt like myself again. I was like, oh, wait a minute, I could go running, and up until this point, like literally climbing to my bedroom on the 2nd floor felt exhausting. So I went on a run, I took a shower, I cleaned the house, I did all the laundry, I put it away, I went to the supermarket, I made their favorite meal. It was like I was back, I was me again. And I'm like, this is crazy, and that night when I was, I would typically co-sleep. I'd let the kids fall asleep in my bed, because they miss their dad. And then I'd lie awake and look at the clock, and, the insomnia would kick in. And when that happened, I was like, I wonder if I could do something with oils for this, like I know the pineal gland releases melatonin. So I made something else up. It worked. And I just almost kept making up my own stuff until I started to feel better. At which point my friends in the nutritional community were like, we want to try it. So I was giving it to them, kind of thinking it's kind of silly. And they're like, this works really well. You should do something with this. So at that point, I finally went online and looked at, someone must be doing this. And I was super surprised by 2 things. The first, that no one was really looking at ready-made essential oil blends through the lens of like balancing organ systems and regions of the brain. And the second was that they made it seem so complicated. Like I felt like I would need a master's degree to blend oils. So I was almost grateful that I just didn't have the mental bandwidth to start with research, because I would have felt unqualified and never done it. So anyway, there was a nutritional therapy event. And at the time it was like $200 to be a vendor. My background was actually marketing and kind of testing concepts. So that I actually knew how to do. That was in my wheelhouse. So I was like, well, let's just see. We'll go to this event, we'll make 100 test kits. We'll see what people think. And, if it works, great. And if not, not really much to lose. And we sold out of the kits in the first hour because everyone said we've always wondered about oils, but it seemed really complicated. We didn't really know what to do. We really like that you've kind of created these blends and told us exactly how to use them. Like we can work with that. So that's how I started the company. And then we can talk about, this was in 2012. And then since then, there have been some other bumps in the road that have, it's been helpful to be well resourced with tools that can help me kind of navigate through them.
Yeah. Let's talk about the significant event that happened in your life uh, that really helped you understand how important vagus nerve stimulation is.
Yeah. So August 27th, 2018, my 12-year-old son, Max, and his three best friends went on a road trip with their dad, my ex-husband, to go whitewater rafting on the eastern side of the state. They never made it there. There was a car accident on the way. My son was killed at the scene of the accident, and two of his friends died from injuries within the coming months. Only one of the children survived. And all of a sudden, like in my mind, as long as my kids were okay, everything was good. Like in my mind, that was the absolute worst thing that could ever happen. Like the thing that, how do you live through that? And so it happened. It was a Monday. All of a sudden, I'm an introvert, and all these people are at my house, and I'm supposed to entertain them. And I don't even. I'm like, how do I do this? Like, what do I do? And fortunately, one of my closest friends on the planet is a therapist, and she said, "All you do right now is eat, sleep, and move. That's all you need to do." And I was like, "I know how to do that." And the eating, but like sleeping, I have oils for that, which actually work better. People tried to give me pharmaceutical drugs, which one of the reasons that I'm so committed to natural things is because I think I'm a slow methylator. Like every time I've tried to take a pharmaceutical drug, it has had a weird effect that's undesirable. So I know my system just works better with natural products. But I made a religious point of sleeping. I was really good about getting to bed. I made a religious point about moving. And then the eating was the really hard thing. I had no appetite, and I wasn't remotely hungry. And eating is correlated with your nervous system. Your autonomic nervous system controls all of your automatic functions, your digestion, your detoxification, your heart rate, your respiratory rate. Sorry, my dogs are excited about this topic. And I started realizing that, when you think there's danger, like the lion chasing you or losing a child, like, oh my God, if your child can die, what else could go wrong? Like suddenly the whole world was unsafe. And when you think things are unsafe, like anything not critical to survival shuts down, like digestion. So it occurred to me like, oh, I have an oil that helps you kind of turn on that safety gauge. It's our parasympathetic oil, and you literally put a drop right here, which I'll explain why. But I started doing that for digestion, thinking like this will maybe help me have an appetite. And what I realized, the unexpected side effect was I felt less anxious. Like I stopped feeling like I was living in a chronic panic attack.
Thank you for sharing that with us. I can't even begin to imagine, and I'm so sorry for your loss deeply. Um, the reason why I wanted to ask you about it though is that so many people have, lost loved ones over the last several years, and it's been a very um, collective time of, trauma for a lot of people. And so I think that your story is actually it can be one of hope and inspiration because I know you, while I know you in a professional context, I see you on the other side of this. And so I'd really like to understand a little bit more from you about the steps that you can do, in terms of stimulating your vagus nerve. If you could talk a little bit about what it is, where it is, how we do that. So, in less than 5 minutes, if somebody who is in the thick of grief, who's really dealing with some hard emotions, or they're really having an overwhelming sense of anxiety or panic or fear or uncertainty or all these things, these natural human emotions, which can be triggered easily by events or circumstances or news or information or whatever. I want people to understand from you how you can take a beat, how you can pause, how you can slow down, and how you can get yourself grounded and calm so you can think properly and understand kind of like what's the best thing to do in the moment, the next step that you're going to take to move forward in your life. Because sometimes when you're feeling those feelings, you can't even imagine moving forward.
No, I know it's really paralysis. And what I really want people to understand is there's nothing wrong with you. This is a very, very normal, primitive reaction to danger, right? You're designed to stay safe and be alive. And when your system senses danger, either physical danger, a car is changing lanes and doesn't see you, or psychological danger, you turn on the news and see, actually just yesterday in Seattle, like a pregnant woman got shot at 11 in the afternoon. And my immediate thought is like, oh my God, that's crazy. Like, who else can get shot? Does that mean my surviving daughter is safe walking down the street? You start to catastrophize and go into this place where the world's not safe. And so that is, your nervous system has two gears. I'm oversimplifying, but basically I'm in danger, I need to allocate resources towards survival gear. That is called the sympathetic branch of your nervous system. And exactly what you were saying happens. It prioritizes survival. So like blood is routed to your arms and legs so you can fight or flee. And it downregulates anything that's not critical to survival. The part of our brain that helps us problem solve, our executive function area, is known as our prefrontal cortex. It's basically our forehead. So blood flow is not routed there because you can't really contemplate the meaning of the universe when you have to survive. You have to make very, very limited fight or flight choices. So if you've ever had that moment, like, I often see my friends, like we're at that age when people are getting tested for breast cancer and they'll get the news like, you don't have cancer, you have pre-cancer, but you have to have surgery tomorrow. And to them, it's like, oh, of course I have to do this right away. And I'm like, take a beat. You don't have cancer, you're not dying, you can get a second opinion. But in their mind, like there's no options. It's very black and white. So how do you take a beat? How do you activate that safety gauge, which is the other branch of your autonomic nervous system, your parasympathetic branch, where you can rest, where blood flow is routed back towards digestion, detoxification, where blood flow is routed to your prefrontal cortex, where suddenly you can realize, wait a minute, like I have choices. And one of those choices is like, I do nothing and I wait until tomorrow. And then you start calmly listing options. And, the opposite, I learned this in therapy, the opposite of I do not feel safe is I have options. Because once you have options, there are all these possibilities. So what is the gear shift between, danger and safety? It is the longest nerve in your body, cranial nerve number 10, the vagus nerve, not like what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but VAGUS. It is what connects the brain to the body and the body to the brain. It's basically a bidirectional information highway. And so it starts at the very back of the head, like right in the back of the neck, splits, and is most accessible on both sides, right behind the earlobe. If you feel with me, kind of behind the earlobe, you're going to feel a bone. That's your mastoid bone, and you're going to feel a divot. All of the reflex points are divots. That makes it easier for you to find them. This is the point where the vagus nerve is literally the closest to the surface and the thickest. And so it's the easiest point to access it. It then kind of winds through the throat, the heart, the lungs, every organ of digestion and detoxification. And one of my mentors, Tis Karazian, used to talk about activating the vagus nerve because it's really hard. It's kind of like trying to bike up a hill in the wrong gear. If you're at the highest gear and you're going uphill, it's going to be a lot harder than if you down regulate into a lower gear. If you're trying to digest your food and your body thinks you're in stress, you're not going to digest, absorb, and assimilate your nutrients. So he used to tell people to like gag yourself with a tongue depressor because, that activates the vagus nerve, or gargle till you cry, or give yourself a coffee enema. All these points are innervated by the vagus nerve. But shockingly, compliance, not so great. You're having an anxiety attack. You're not going to go give yourself a coffee enema. But here's what you can do. There is a New York neuroscientist named Kevin Tracy who surgically implanted a pacemaker-like device on that spot. And he was using it to stimulate the vagus nerve. Here's the domino cascade. You stimulate the vagus nerve activates the parasympathetic nervous system. You suddenly feel safe. You have options. The anxiety dissipates because you have more cognition about how to kind of move through it. So you can get an invasive surgery. You can do acupuncture. You can also use stimulatory oils. Oils are kind of known as stimulatory, which means that, if you put it on your arm, it might look a little red. It might feel a little hot. If you do that, you're not going to use water. Oil and water don't mix. You're going to just take any oil from your kitchen, olive oil, coconut oil, dilute it. But stimulatory oils can be used to stimulate the vagus nerve, and it takes way less than 5 minutes. It's 5 seconds. You take the bottle, you flip it, you go like that. I think it's like 2 seconds. You can do it on one side, you can do it on two sides. Basically, what you're doing, you're using a natural topical remedy to stimulate a nerve that's very close to the surface. It's clove and lime, so the clove is stimulatory, but has like medium-sized molecules. So in isolation, it would probably take like 10 minutes to kind of get through the skin. Lime and all the citrus oils have much smaller molecules. So when you combine them, you get kind of stimulatory and fast acting. So you put it there. What then happens is your body kind of allows itself to feel safe. That feeling of a warm hug, a hot cup of tea. You suddenly feel safe. You feel nurtured. Your executive function comes back online. And you're able to take a beat and to say, wait a minute, all of a sudden, every problem, you're like, well, maybe I'm going to die and the world's going to end. And that's certainly possible. Like, we'll hold space for that. But it could also be possible that it's going to be fine. It could also be possible that maybe I'm hungry. Maybe I should get a snack. Maybe I need to move. Maybe I'm going to put on my sneakers and go outside. Like, all of a sudden, you have all these options and you have all this space, and it just lessens the anxiety.
That's great. So I have, like I mentioned, I've ordered some of your product, but what I really like is that you have this insert where you talk about how these oils have special benefits specifically for the different organs in the body. And you talk about different opportunities to support brain health, circadian rhythm, histamine balance, activating your parasympathetic system. There's some anti-inflammatory benefits as well. So can you just walk us through kind of number one, let's start with the basics. Why is it blue?
Well, it's kind of a funny story. The bottles, when my friend dropped off the box, they were in blue bottles. So yeah, blue, different colors, just like an oil in your kitchen, right? You don't want like a plastic see-through bottle because sunlight kind of compromises the integrity of it. And so some oils come in brown bottles, which is good because it, alleviates the sunlight. I like the frequency of blue. Like if you look at, everyone kind of quotes like, oh, in ancient Egypt, they used all the oils. Yes, they did. And they used a lot of blue lotus and they had them in blue bottles. There's just a different kind of, every color is a frequency, and the structure and the organization from the frequency of blue, I think just amplifies it, It's like
awesome.
eating.
And then, but the actual color is blue as well when you apply
For some of them, yeah.
Not all of them.
Tansy is my favorite oil. It comes from Morocco. It's magical. So I do have that, like in the Calm that you held up. It's in a lot of blends, not all of them, but yeah. They're all natural. I don't add any dyes or artificial colors. It's just,
It's
the way
beautiful.
nature made them.
And it smells amazing. Will you say the name of the ingredient again?
Oh, blue tansy.
Okay, awesome. For anxiety specifically, which oil would you recommend?
Well, here's a fun hack. I like parasympathetic and adrenal for anxiety, but here's a cool trick. So our friend and colleague, Titus Chu, who is a functional neurologist, which basically means that they're, different regions of the brain do different things. And so they're just starting to balance the regions of the brain. He taught me that I used to have panic attacks in supermarket checkout lines, which was so annoying because, you'd go through the whole supermarket and you have the kids and you're buying everything for them and you're standing in the line and there are too many people and the walls start closing in and you feel really hot and your heart starts racing. And sometimes I would abandon my cart which just drove me bananas because it was such an unproductive waste of time. But I would feel so overwhelmed, I'd have to get out of there. Yeah. So he was telling me what's happening then, like that panic attack, is the right frontal lobe, your right forehead, that's overactive. And he's like, try this. Smell anything through your left nostril. Like literally, you could be at Trader Joe's and open up one of the, mandarin oranges, and just you plug your right nostril, smell through your left nostril. What that's doing, the nasal passageways are basically the elevator of the brain. Everyone talks about right brain, left body. That is true, except for the nostrils. So right nostril goes directly to right brain, left nostril goes directly to left brain. So when you plug the right nostril, smell something through the left nostril, you are now stimulating that left frontal lobe. So it's a little bit like a teeter-totter. All the weight was on the right side, but now there's some weight on the left side. So the two hemispheres balance out, and suddenly the panic attack dissipates.
Wow. That's so cool.
And the effects are additive and cumulative. The more you do this, it's like working a muscle, the less likely you are to have those panic attacks.
That's so cool. So what would you recommend? For people that are naturally highly anxious or have been dealing with anxiety and chronic overwhelm for, let's say, years? If they're like, I've had this since I was a teenager, and now I'm an adult, or I'm I'm a person who's well advanced in my age. What's your recommendation for cadence? Is it 3 times a day, 6 times a day? Is it whenever you think about it? Like, help us understand, when you say if you do it frequently, you very well could notice less anxiety.
Yeah, I mean, there are times when I do it every 5 minutes, like early in my grief process. So it's not limited, but I think that when you're starting a new habit, the easiest way to start a new habit is to link it to an old habit, because we all have those supplement graveyards. Like if the supplement's sitting in your closet, it's really not going to help you. If the oil is like sitting in a closet, it's not going to help you. So I tell people when they start to leave it by their toothbrush. And just, we all have been trained to brush our teeth twice a day. So just do it when you're brushing your teeth. And what I've noticed is people start to recognize, oh, I feel better. And then it's not a hard thing to remember that, it's little, they carry it in their purse, they leave it in their car. So it's kind of as needed. For digestion, do it before you start your meal, because how you eat is almost more important than what you eat. If you're eating under stress, you're really not digesting, absorbing, or assimilating your nutrients. So let's make sure, food is expensive. It takes time to prepare. Let's make sure you're really optimizing the benefit of the food you're eating.
That's great. So, can we just run through the different organs? So you've got adrenal, that it can help. We talked about anxiety, stress, even low back pain and fatigue. What are some recommendations for placement, for application, and which oil would you recommend for that, for adrenal
We
support?
have an adrenal oil, and your adrenal glands are part of your endocrine system, and they are involved in many hormones, but the hormone they're most well known for is cortisol, the stress hormone. So they're constantly pumping out cortisol. And there are ways that you can kind of test your cortisol levels. It's not a flatline experience. It's supposed to be high in the morning so that when you wake up, you have energy to get out of bed. And then as the day wanes, it's supposed to be lower in the evening so that you're not like having repetitive thought, lying in bed and thinking about 20 million things and you can't fall asleep. So there are obviously supplements that can elevate cortisol, lower cortisol, but then there are what's known as adaptogenic herbs that kind of meet you where you're at, like ashwagandha, rhodiola. Those are my favorite because, if you've ever gotten your cortisol tested, it's supposed to be kind of up and down. And there are times in the day when you should be higher than where you are. It needs to lift you up. And there are times when you're kind of elevated and you want to flatten out. So I like herbs for that. And that's what this blend does. It just kind of meets you where you're at and helps you uplift if you need it, or kind of calm if you need it. So your adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. Your kidneys are the size of your fist. And the lower part of your kidney, the bottom of your kidney, is kind of starts on your lowest rib. So if you take your fist and kind of put it behind your back and line it up with your lowest rib, on either side, then the adrenals are going to be right on top. So that's the easiest way to find where the adrenals are.
Okay, great. Then you've got one for gallbladder, supports viscosity of bile to help support fat digestion, detoxification, and even constipation. So which oil would you recommend to support digestion?
Well, there are a couple for digestion. Digestion is parasympathetic because that kind of helps with the whole digestive cascade and the release of hydrochloric acid. Pancreas, which helps with the release of pancreatic enzymes, and then gallbladder. The gallbladder is, I fight for the underdog kind of. Like, I feel like there are a couple organs that no one talks about. Like, the gallbladder is so underserved and it's so unbelievably important. It not only breaks down fat, but it helps with elimination. Like if you're hormonal, it's what helps make sure that the old estrogen leaves the body and doesn't get reabsorbed and recirculated. So I feel like anything you can do to help your gallbladder is amazing. The gallbladder is located under the right breast. Like if you're wearing an underwire bra, it's kind of right around there. You just put your hand under it. If you have kind of gallbladder challenges, sometimes the bile is supposed to flow like water, but sometimes it's more like molasses. Not uncommon as we age, after we have children, if we have stress, and some easy symptoms, like if you get motion sick, that's often gallbladder. I actually think that morning sickness when you're pregnant, like you're pregnant, what do you want to do? You want the baby to be healthy. So you get kind of nauseous so you can vomit out the toxins so they don't affect the baby. Mild headaches, kind of right around the forehead, pain between the shoulder blades, headaches. There are a lot of gallbladder meridians in the head. Headaches are often correlated with kind of gallbladder, just overwhelm and fatigue. So anything you can do to support your gallbladder, this oil over the gallbladder. I like to do it before bed because in Chinese medicine, every organ kind of has its own happy hour. Gallbladder happy hour is at 3 a.m. So sometimes if you're waking up in the middle of the night around 3 a.m., just to go to the bathroom or whatever, that means you're detoxing and eliminating. And then maybe it's not so hard to go back to sleep. That's often liver gallbladder time. So it's just a nice topical way to support the gallbladder in addition to like bitters, binders, castor oil, coffee enema, lots of things you can do.
Awesome. So you have on here too, heart helps support cardio system and emotions associated with the heart. So talk to us a little bit about application for heart health, and also, I think this is also probably associated with grief as well.
It's hugely associated with grief and so many things. Like there's so much research that the Heart Math Institute is amazing. They do phenomenal research that the heart sends more signals than the brain or the gut. There's this idea of like heart coherence, like this idea, like say I'm using a silly example, but say you're on the phone with customer service and you're trying to solve a problem, and whoever you're talking to, like that's above their pay grade. They can't help. So they like, you talk to the manager and then maybe you talk to their manager. You just keep going up the chain to solve the problem, right? So sometimes when you're struggling with a symptom, if you want to go upstream, the heart is upstream. So we have an oil that kind of helps both the physical and the emotional heart, just to open, to allow yourself to receive more positive things and connect. And then recently we have a fascia blend that I'm madly in love with because it's really hard to unpack the fascia. And so many of us, especially moms, we kind of brace for impact, right? And then the danger passes, but we're still kind of hunched over. Yeah. And that impacts our ability to give and receive love. Hard if you ever go to yoga and like it's hard for you to do the heart opening, you're like, oh, I hate that move. This is a good one. It's fascia release. It's in a roller bottle. You can literally just put it on your back and it changes everything. It like, we have rigidity in life, like we're inflexible, plans change, balls get thrown at us and we're like, especially the control freaks or perfectionists like me. This just allows you to like flow through things better.
That's so cool. Okay, hormone balance. It supports the release of stored hormones in the fat they are stored in. So talk to us a little bit about your favorite places to apply it for hormone balance.
Yeah, my favorite places for that one, oddly, are the ankles. I love to apply things, especially like for hot flashes and things like that. Like I feel like the feet and the ankles really kind of let things in. There's a reason it's funny. We were just in Greece and we learned superheroes descended from like Greek mythology and the gods. Like the reason they all have capes, Athena had a cape and the cape shields them.
Interesting. Okay.
I think sometimes, like why do we put perfume on our wrist? Because it's warm, it's a pulse point, it gets into our system really easily. So when in doubt, like the ankles and the wrists are really good points to put things on. So the hormone balance I like on the wrist. I like on the ankles. It can be over the heart, but it's generally systemic. So it's good to put it in, like those kind of high circulation points in your body.
Okay, great. What about for liver function and detox?
Yeah, we have, interestingly, we have two blends for the liver. One is called it's Body Balance Liver, and it's basically just for liver vitality and liver function. But one of the things also with women, we're so kind and we're pleasers and we want to make everyone happy and we're a little angry, but we don't get angry because women don't get angry. And so we just stuff it. And where does it go? It goes in our liver. And when are we like, when we're PMSing, when the liver is like bleeding and all that anger is like hissing out. So I have one called Liver Support that's an emotion blend, and it's great for anger. And let's be honest, grief brings up anger. You're so angry. Why is my kid dead? Why did this have to happen? Like it comes up. It's one of the stages of grief, and it's not my favorite stage, but especially for those of us that are pleasers, that we're like, what do we do with our anger? We're not allowed to get mad, So
Yeah.
here's how you get mad. You put an oil like a couple inches from your nose and you just smell it. The Liver Support's a great one. You breathe it in, you exhale out, you might start crying. But just like, if you ever get really ravenous, I have blood sugar issues, so I get a little hangry sometimes. But then sometimes when I do that, if I'm at a restaurant, I'll just order an avocado because I know that'll come out quickly. And by the time I've eaten the avocado, I'm like, I'm okay. Like I'm not as ravenous anymore because I'm satiated. There is a smell satiety. So, it's interesting. You can count. It's usually somewhere between 3 to 7 breaths, but just smelling it in and breathing it out, you might still be pissed, but you feel a little bit more able. You know what you're going to do with your anger. You're not in that kind of like "Rah, rah" stage.
Thank you for explaining that. You've got lymph, pancreatus. I'm sorry. Apparently, I can't talk. Pancreas and thymus as well.
Yeah. So lymph is amazing. Lymph and gallbladder, it's really just about bile and lymph, like what is lymph? It's the sewer system for the body. It's what so many of us, I think, so almost every illness or ailment or symptom can be correlated with toxicity. Our whole system is kind of trying to mobilize getting the garbage out, and lymph does not have a pump. So if you're not moving, it's not moving. And every day it's like, you don't just brush your teeth once and say like, okay, I'm good. It's not like your passport. I'm good for 10 years, not brushing my teeth for a while. You really need to move your lymph every day. And, it can be complicated or it can be easy. Here's what I do to make it easy. So, all of the lymph runs through these clavicles. This is kind of the exit point. And if you just gently like rub, if it feels tender, guess what? That's congested lymph. If you, Kelly Kennedy, our French, talks about armpits, pits versus puffs. If you've got kind of a puffy armpit and it's not concave, that's lymph. She believes that when this is congested, toxins sit around the thyroid and causes Hashimoto's, thyroid stuff, or, the underwire bra prevents lymph drainage and suddenly you have issues with your breasts. So lymph, if you do nothing else, move your lymph, move your arms above your head, move every day, gently massage that area, or you can apply the lymph oil on these 2 points on the clavicle. It's like keeping the acupuncture needle in. And then also kind of around the neck and the tonsils. If you're getting old and you feel like you're getting that turkey gobble, that moving lymph will help with that. You'll look prettier. You won't need to get a facelift and get scars, all of that stuff. This is just a great thing to do when you're sitting in traffic, when you're like waiting in line at the bank, whatever it is, on hold, just move your lymph.
I think it'd be great to do just for the turkey gobble itself.
Yeah, I know, right?
That's enough to motivate, I think, a lot of people. Okay, so I also understand that you've got a blend that helps with attention. So for parents who are concerned about kids with ADD or ADHD and they've got attention issues, you mentioned you mentioned earlier you had really worked specifically through diet nutrition to help your son with some of that stuff. But how can these oils help support parents with kids who have these issues?
Well, parasympathetic helps because sometimes when, you're all over the places because you think the world isn't safe, so you're checking everything out. And then anything with grounding, like honestly, let your kids outside barefoot, let them climb trees, let them play. But the attention blend, there were some research studies done on ADD kids, and the main benefit is this blend called, or this oil called vetiver, which is a plant with really deep roots in the earth. So it kind of helps center you. So you can put that on the bottom of the feet before school. It helps them feel really grounded and centered. And then honestly, like peppermint has tremendous research. You can smell peppermint, you can put it on your temporal lobes, your forehead, so that there's energy and blood flow there. That's really good. Smelling anything. And if you have a kid who's sensitive, just take them to the supermarket and let them pick what they like. A lot of kids like orange. Doesn't need to be crazy expensive. Just get them in the habit of recognizing that they can be in their body and be in the present by activating their sense of smell.
That's great. And then what do you recommend to support circadian rhythm and sleep patterns?
Yeah, so sleep's really interesting. Everyone is like, oh, lavender is great for sleep. I'm like, lavender is great for relaxing. Sometimes the problem is not just that you're not relaxed. So we've kind of identified that there can be three different things that are going on with sleep. The first is circadian rhythm. If you're having trouble falling asleep, melatonin is the hormone that your pineal gland releases in response to darkness to let you fall asleep. It works in tandem with cortisol because if the lion is chasing you, it's not helpful to fall asleep. You would be dead. So if your cortisol is high, it's a little bit like a teeter-totter. Melatonin is often low. So what our blend does is it triggers the pineal gland to naturally release melatonin, which as a beneficial side effect brings cortisol down. So your anxiety lessens. And you're going to put it, the pineal gland is right in the middle of the brain between the eyes. I don't recommend putting oil on your face before you go to bed, because if you're a tossy-turvy sleeper, it could get in your eyes, not a good plan. So put it on the very top of the head, kind of on the ears, basically above the ears, on the skull. This is a really good access point for any remedy, like you can put GABA there, it just kind of helps get right into the brain, and then the back of the head. So those points, what you're basically doing is just kind of surrounding the frequency of the oil around the pineal gland so that it kind of activates it to release melatonin. If you wake up around 1 a.m. and you're wide awake, you can go clean the kitchen. That is nocturnal hypoglycemia. That is a blood sugar wake up. So what happens is your blood sugar dips a little low. The adrenal glands release emergency energy into the bloodstream, and then you're adrenalized because you've got like high blood sugar. So all you can do is help the pancreas release insulin to carry sugar out of the blood and into the cells. So the oil to support the pancreas is really good. If you're waking up at 3 a.m., like to use the facilities, or you're just a little groggy, that would be a liver gallbladder detox wake up. And so supporting the liver and the gallbladder are great.
That's great. I'm just so impressed with your depth of research, your knowledge around all things holistic and natural. And if you guys want to learn more about this, I want to highly recommend Jodi's book, Essential Oils to Boost the Brain and Heal the Body. You can get it on Amazon. Jodi, is this available at most book retailers as well?
Everywhere. It's through Random House, so everywhere books are sold. Yes.
Okay. Great. So if you guys want to check that out, please do. And Jodi, do you have any just words of wisdom for our audience out there who are struggling with anxiety, grief, stress, overwhelm? Just any encouraging words of wisdom from somebody who's been through some really challenging life situations, and you're on the other side now.
Yes, I forgot one thing. Our lung oil, grief is associated with lungs. Lung support is really good if you have that nighttime heart hurting wake up to put on for grief. But it's interesting. One of the first things I did when this happened was I needed a role model. I needed to know that someone had lost a child and been okay on the other end, because if I knew someone else had done it, I knew I could do it. And so I really looked for those kind of role models, and I found many. But along the way, I found this quote that I really love by Holocaust survivor Viktor Frankl. He talks about between the stimulus and the response, there is a space. And in that space lies our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. And what that means to me is if you can kind of recognize, like, wow, I am really overwhelmed, I'm really paralyzed, I'm really flipping out, and just take a beat and take an oil. You can smell it, it becomes Pavlovian, that's kind of a signal. Or just like, 1, 2, 3, like flip the bottle, put the oil on, and give yourself a moment. And it's that space. It's kind of like in the Matrix where time slows down. You suddenly, something feels very overwhelming and scary. You feel unsafe and you don't need to respond. You don't need to send that text back. You can say, hey, can I think about it and call you back? You can take that beat. And in that beat, you get to choose how you respond. And that's, even though the world at times feels overwhelming, scary, you feel disempowered, like you don't have options, this gives you options. So you always have that.
That's great. If our audience wants to try some of your oils, where should they go?
They can go to vibrantblueoil.com. And actually, if they want, I delve into a lot more of this in the book, but if they're just curious and they don't want to necessarily buy a book, they can go to our free gift at boostthebrainbook.com/gift.
Cool. And then if they're not quite sure, because we've covered a lot of different oils, if they're not quite sure which one to choose, if they just want to try one to start out, what would you recommend? What's your best oil for grief, overwhelm, anxiety?
I think parasympathetic is the best all around player just because it touches so many points, and most people really like it. That's a great place to start. And if you have questions, we're really good about getting back to people. Just send us an email at info@vibrantblueoils.com.
Awesome. Jodi, thank you so much for your time today. I greatly appreciate you sharing your wealth of knowledge around all things natural essential oils and vagus nerve stimulation and natural remedies to address stress, grief, overwhelm, and anxiety. Really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yep, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks.